Resulting in the loss of 168 lives, the Oklahoma City bombing is undoubtedly one of the darkest days in American history. But the death of the first man on scene that day, 385 days later, is both shocking and extremely hard to believe. This video is not going to discuss who really was behind the Oklahoma City bombing, but rather the mysterious details around that one man's death. Terrance Yeakey was born on November 9th, 1965. He lived a relatively happy life, joining the US military after leaving school and spending time deployed in Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia. Shortly after leaving the military, Yeakey joined the Oklahoma City Police Department, where he worked his way up to become a sergeant. This was a great time in Yeakey's life. He was getting back together with his ex-wife, and they even planned to remarry. Also, he was in the process of applying to join the FBI in Dallas, a role he had dreamed of for many years, and was due for a final interview with them. But shortly before this, his life changed in a way that no one could ever have seen coming. On the morning of April 19th, 1995, just a few blocks away from where Yeakey was on patrol, a bomb exploded inside of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, immediately destroying over a third of the building and killing 168 people trapped within. The official story of the bombing is that it was perpetrated by two anti-government extremists in retaliation for the Ruby Ridge and Waco seed incidents that had happened in the years before. According to the FBI, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols parked a rental truck filled with 2,200 kilograms of homemade explosives inside the building's underground drop-off area before lighting the fuse and fleeing the area on foot. The resulting explosion was so large, it could be felt up to 55 miles away. However, this story is often refuted, and is believed to be a government cover-up for an alternate series of events that many believe truly happened. Yeakey was just a few blocks away from the explosion, and immediately responded to the scene. He was actually the very first emergency service worker to arrive that day. In a selfless act of heroism, he rushed into the bomb site and saved the lives of 8 people. For his bravery, Yeakey was scheduled to be recognized with a Medal of Valor from the Oklahoma City Police Department on May 11th, 1996. Just 3 days before this, however, he was found dead. It wasn't just the sight of mutilated bodies or the smell of burning flesh that stayed with Yeakey that day. Something else he saw inside of the Alfred P. Murrah building stuck with him much more. What he saw inside the building that day did not line up with the official version of events. Yeakey was so infatuated with what he saw that shortly after the bombing he began to conduct his own investigation to find out the real truth. He made progress on his investigation, storing all of his findings in a storage facility near El Reno, Oklahoma. Yeakey did not tell a soul about his findings, only stating to his family that he knew something else had happened that day. Yeakey continued on with his investigation, all the while being pressured into accepting the official version of events by his friends and co-workers. However, he would not give in, and subsequently, strange things began happening to him and his family. They were the subject of repeated threatening phone calls from unknown people, and according to his partner, Tanya Yeakey, they were subject to people putting nails in our tires, breaking our back windows, just strange, bizarre little things. This all took a mental toll on Terrance, and he was described as living in great fear at the time of his investigation. These events continued up until May 8th, 1996, the day that Yeakey was found dead. The morning before, Yeakey had showed up to the home of his older sister in a state of panic and looking physically ill. His sister suggested taking him to the emergency room, to which Yeakey responded with, "They can find me there." His last ever known words were, "As soon as I shake these feds that are following me, I'll be back and we can go to dinner." Yeakey was never seen alive again. Yeakey's body was discovered in a remote field over a mile from where his abandoned vehicle had been found. His body had been brutally disfigured, and one eyewitness described his vehicle as looking like someone had butchered a hog inside of it. Yeakey's body was found to have, according to the official autopsy report, 11 slits on his wrists, arms, and elbows, stab wounds on both sides of his neck close to the jugular vein, and a bullet wound in his head. He was also found with bruises around his neck and wrists, as well as grass being found inside of the slash wounds. Now, take this into account when you hear the official cause of death: suicide. The official story writes that Yeakey slit his wrists and neck inside of his car, where he bled, before leaving the vehicle, climbing over a barbed wire fence, and crawling for over a mile before finally shooting himself in the head. Think about this story for a second. It's impossible. The official investigation into his death was no better. No gun was found at the scene of his body, no fingerprints were taken, and no interviews were conducted with Yeakey's family. Rather, he was quickly found to have committed suicide, and the case was closed. Is it possible that this genuinely was the case, and Yeakey really did commit suicide? Let's investigate this a bit further. First of all, in order to commit suicide, he would have had to have been suicidal. Yeakey had shown no evidence of this to anyone in his life. He was very happy. He was due to start his new job with the FBI, was going to remarry the love of his life, and was due to receive a Medal of Valor from the Oklahoma City Police Department. Now, the events of April 19th may well have been weighing on his mind, but this was not evident to anyone around him. Perhaps Yeakey really was suicidal and was just very good at hiding it. Let's look at the manner of his death. Slitting his wrists in his car? This is possible, but then crawling over a mile, and climbing over a barbed wire fence, and then shooting himself in the head with a gun that was only miraculously discovered by an FBI agent looking through an already thoroughly searched area of land? I don't believe that, and I don't think you do either. Or maybe Yeakey was experiencing an episode of trauma-induced psychosis. This would definitely explain his paranoid behaviour and his obsessive need to complete the investigation, but his manner of death? No. No person could do all of that by themselves. It is obvious that Yeakey was killed. The most widely believed theory is that Yeakey was killed by government agents because he was going to announce the details of his findings at his Medal of Valor award ceremony, an event that would be televised live, giving him a chance to share what he had discovered. It is thought that Yeakey was ambushed in his car, where he was repeatedly stabbed and had his wrist slit. He was then bound by rope and dragged over a mile through rough terrain before finally being executed via a bullet to the head. After being informed of his death the next day, via just a phone call, Yeakey's family began the search for answers. To this day, they refute the official verdict that he committed suicide. As they began to search for answers, they too were the victim of targeted harassment. Events such as being stalked by unmarked police cars, and having their home broken into with a balloon reading the words, "We know where you are," left inside, only helped to fuel the theories that Yeakey was murdered. In the end, Yeakey's family ended their investigation into his death, and the case was closed. Now, 26 years later, there is a well-known saying in Oklahoma City: if you don't want the Terry Yeakey done to you, keep your mouth shut.